Hi, I'm Daniel Hugh. I teach at the high school. This is my 11th year of teaching, my 6th year at KIPP. I teach AP English, pre-AP English, and Happiness 101. And I'm here to talk to you about my TED Talk titled, Do What Makes You Nervous. So, what I need you to do is to close your eyes and think of something big that you've always wanted to do or be great at, but you've just never gotten around to doing it. What is it? Helen, can you think of one?
I've always wanted to. I have no idea.
Think about it. Take some time.
Okay, something big.
Like something that you've always been nervous about tackling.
Oh, going on stage.
Going on stage and performing. Okay,
Yeah.
So why haven't you done it?
I have, but it's so scary.
What do you mean? Like what's going on?
It's like there's so many people. I just look at the wall
Yeah.
instead of looking at the audience because
Okay.
it's scary.
Cool. And you're worried about what people think.
Yeah.
Cool. So now I want you to put yourself in the position of one of your students. What are a few things that your students dream of doing inside your classroom, outside your classroom, and what's stopping them? Well, I know a lot of my students want to be awesome at essay writing. I know a lot of my students want to be awesome at seminars, but they get really, really nervous and they're afraid of what people will think about them. So what's stopping them is just this fear. So how much are our students losing or missing out on because of fear? So how do we get our students to get over these fears, but also at the same time, how do we get ourselves to get over these fears? So let me tell you about my journey to KIPP. I did Teach for America in the Bronx, right up the street at Bronx Prep. During my first year, I was like any other first-year teacher. I really, really struggled. And what happened was I realized from my first to my second year that I had so many talented students with so much potential, but they just weren't reaching it. And it really bothered me because I couldn't figure out how to tap all that potential. And then one day, I was reading the New York Times, and then an article about KIPP and all the work that Dave Levin and Martin Seligman were doing came up, and it was about teaching character. And one of my favorite quotes that I love is, Mark Twain says, the two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you figure out why. And that day set me on my path, and I knew that's all I cared about. I wanted to dedicate my life to character. So, eventually I came to KIPP. I learned all about the 7 character traits. I became obsessed with trying to teach them, trying to use them in my classroom. And what I realized after my first or second year at KIPP was I being really effective with teaching character? Right? We say we're 51% character, but was I really being effective with it? So, as I was thinking about this, I noticed a lot of the same problems that I had at Bronx Prep to hear that a lot of kids had so much untapped potential but weren't reaching it, weren't finding, weren't happy. And in a lot of one-on-one conversations, I had life talks with kids, and they were really, really, they seemed stuck, right? They seemed stuck emotionally and academically. So as I was thinking about this, I asked myself 3 questions. How are we actually teaching these character traits? How do we manifest these character traits in our classroom? And what do our students really need to have a choice-filled life? So what I came up with was my happiness course. And in Happiness 101, it's pretty much everything that you wish you learned in high school, but were never taught. I think the most important skills are soft skills, skills that we can't measure, so love, forgiveness, understanding. And what I did was, I kept trying to think, what would I need as a teenager to have the best life possible? And I broke it down into these major categories. So mindset, vulnerability, vision, goal management, love and relationship, trust and communication, race and culture, gender and sexuality, and then financial literacy. And I've had a lot of success with it, but when I started trying to apply all the things that I wanted to in happiness to my other English classes, I pretty much became a life coach. And the only things that you would hear me say constantly on a daily basis were take risks, Be courageous. Do what you love. Stop caring about what others think of you. Never quit, and everything you need to do is already inside of you. Now, sadly, those are empty words. Last year I had a tough year at KIPP, and I realized that I wasn't balancing my personal life, I wasn't with my professional life, and I was struggling, and I was unhappy. And after some soul searching, I realized the big problem was, and this is my mantra for this year, is a happiness teacher needs to practice what he preaches. So, what happened was, I tried to figure out, as you can see, what am I going to do, right? So, during my first few weeks of AP class, a lot of my students get really, really nervous, and pretty much the entire class is run through seminar. 90% of the class is run through seminar. And I was talking to my kids, and I was like, man, this is the best way for you guys to learn and practice your skills. But I would isolate the kids who didn't talk too much or were silent, and I'd ask them, like, what's going on? And they were so deathly afraid of looking stupid. They were constantly worried about being judged or being criticized by other people. So I said to myself, man, this is like my aha moment. This is like, what's something I've always wanted to be good at, but was too scared to do, so that I could empathize with my students and like understand like fully what they're doing. So, what was this scary thing? Well, I decided to take salsa lessons. Okay? And thus started my journey. So, salsa for me, let's start at the very beginning. Thanks to the help of Groupon, I decided, oh, you know what, I'm going to do this salsa lessons. And it was only $40, but I thought I was going to quit within a month. And lesson one that I realized is you fail 100% of the time if you never try. It's all about mindset. So when I started salsa class, I walked in and I immediately eyed all the competition. I was like, man, am I going to be better than this? Are these people going to watch out and look at me? How am I going to do? And I was so worried about that it kind of made it unfun, and I got a lot of anxiety doing it. So let me give you a little context too. For my entire life, I would be the guy who would cling up against the wall and be afraid to dance. So this was a really big jump into my comfort zone. But my instructor, Josh, who's really, really great, broke it down into steps really simple. And within a few days, a few lessons, I was like, okay, I'm not too bad, and I decided to keep going. Which brings us to lesson 2. Everything you value in life takes time and a lot of patience. So there were so many times where I was like, man, this is a struggle, I'm not going to continue this, but I kept on going, and I realized, despite what I thought everyone thought of me, despite me tripping and falling and messing up count, despite just struggling with it at times, I really learned to appreciate salsa. And it was a really good outlet for me after school. And then I figured out salsa. Psych! So now my story takes a really ugly turn, starting right now. So, in salsa, we have these things called socials. And at socials, you dance, right? You go with other people who practice salsa, but the thing is, there's no classroom, no teacher, no lesson. And the week before our first social, Josh had us on the dance floor ready for partner work, and he said, all right guys, social dance. And I kid you not, I forgot everything that I learned. And the most embarrassing thing, right? Full disclaimer, the only reason I actually did salsa, the first real reason I only did salsa was because I wanted to meet women. The second eventually became hey, I want to be a better teacher. But the most embarrassing thing was when he started, I could only do the most simple step. I couldn't do anything else. And then the worst part is you rotate with other female partners. So I'm there just doing the basic step. And I looked around and I saw everyone kicking butt, and I could only do the basic parts. And it was so embarrassing. But the day of the social, I started coming up with every single excuse. I was like, oh, I'm tired, oh, I'm sick, my back hurts, and I wasn't going to go. I was psyching myself, talking myself out of it, but then I said to myself, if I don't do this, I'm the biggest hypocrite to my students. So I ended up going. It was pretty ugly, but I did all right. And it made me want to commit to it a little bit more. But then I went to my second social. And at my second social, this is where the trains just completely fell off. I danced with stranger women like I've never met before, and it was awful. I didn't remember anything. It was the most embarrassing thing possible. And I got so angry that I stormed out. And what happened is, which brings us to our third lesson, is we have these self-limiting beliefs. And as I was walking home, I realized that when I was dancing, I was saying things like, oh, she must think I'm awful. Everyone's looking at you. You can't do this. Get off the dance floor. You're out of your league. And my brain was just hearing all those negative voices. And I said, oh my God, where are the positive voices? Right? And how are we getting our students to talk to them and be their own cheerleader and be positive, right? So I realized I had to start saying more positive things to myself, especially when I was dancing. Wow, you're here. You're trying. Man, if you saw where you were at the beginning to now, man, you've gotten so much better. And that's what I had to start changing my mindset with. The next lesson was deliberate practice. So, just like our students, right? They're like, oh, I read, I practiced, I'm good, right? That's what I was doing. Now, after that social, I committed myself. I started watching every single video like I was a professional athlete and trying to retrace every move. I was paying attention to the rhythm. I was paying attention to every single cue or signal that our instructor gave us. And then I started finding female partners at class to practice with, and I started getting a lot better. But then, another terrible, embarrassing moment, Josh decided, hey, let's do a review session. And he started reviewing all the steps. And once again, things that every other male lead had mastered, I completely forgot. And for 3 weeks, I just could not get through any combination. I was a mess and kept rotating and just seeing every female come around and go oh, this is Dan, he's the worst. You know the kid that you worry about in class? That you're oh, maybe they'll never get it? That's me, it's awesome. But as I was about to quit, this memory popped into my head. When I was 10 years old, somehow I made the all-star team in playing baseball. And my first at bat, I hit a double. And then I kid you not, I struck out for 2 years in a row. 2 years in a row, the most embarrassing thing possible, but I kept on going. And I reframed this, that at 32, I should be able to continue to do that, because 10-year-old Dan did it. And I think a lot of time in class, students go through so many epic failures and go through so many things that they're so resilient. And they see a test or they see an essay and then they're like, oh, I can't do it. When a lot of times they just have to reframe failure. So, second to last lesson is every time I'm on the dance floor, if you could videotape my thoughts, it is a whirlwind. And I realized I just have to let my body loose and just have fun. So incidentally, at the same time, I also dabbled in a little hip-hop. And I went to this hip-hop lesson. And when I walked in, I saw these goofy, old, white guys dancing like crazy. And you know what? The best part is they didn't give a damn about what anyone was thinking. And they would go every week, and they'd just have fun. And I realized, man, I need to get to that point. So how are we going to get our students to take something that at first scares them, that they don't feel uncomfortable, but eventually get to the point where hey, seminar is fun, right? Writing essays is fun. Okay? And finally, in looking over these 9 months, the most important lesson is knowing your worth. I think this has opened my eyes and has been a mirror for how I look at myself, and I need to stop caring so much about external validation and just worrying about myself and being proud of myself and understanding that I have so many traits and qualities, and then I'm in a process just like anyone else. And I think a lot of our students need to do the same thing, where they just have to realize, like, hey, you know, I might struggle in Mr. Hughes' English class, I might struggle in seminar, but there's so many things I have to bring to the table, and I'm worth a lot. So, and now, look what I can do. So, I can show you some dancing, but I'll insert that video later. And then, so, in closing, the most important thing is, be a student again, but in a classroom where you're learning something that scares you. Do what makes you nervous. Thank you.